teachers form informal learning communities. And this is what we were really interested in, is how to kind of start to facilitate that and what materials would allow people to share their stories. So one of the last workshops that we had done was about reflecting and remembering what the transition had been like, starting to map out the journey, and then sharing wisdom and the lessons learned. So we did this through a journey map, which is a tool that designers will often use based upon real observation and documentation of how somebody is using a product, a system, a service. But we turned this into more of a reflective tool for teachers to start to share their stories. One of the primary things that this tool does was it breaks down complex lived experiences, and it starts to do this chronologically, because this is a really easy way to start to recall and access information. So pretty basic, it starts from left to right, and we had specialized prompts for the teachers that for the purpose of this workshop session today, we've kind of made it a little bit more generalized, but it still basically divides the story into a beginning, a middle, and an end. It creates really comparable points and milestones going throughout the journey. And it helps to capture some of the context of a moment. So when one teacher says, we were thrown into a classroom and all the furniture was changed, for somebody that could be a really invigorating experience that causes curiosity and you wanted to know, like, what could you do in this new space? For a different teacher, it could be a complete betrayal and somebody went into your classroom and they moved your furniture and how dare they? So rather than just saying what was happening, what this map does is it starts to kind of capture some of the information, some of the feelings, the emotions, what was positive and negative about that experience and why. One of the very most important things about this tool is it creates a complex lived experience into something that's kind of comparable and shareable. So by making something visible, it gives you something that you can edit, it gives you something that you can reflect back upon, and it gives you something that you can share with others a lot easier than starting to tell this long story and getting distracted by tangents. And it kind of creates it in a way that's easy for us as researchers to analyze. But we were hearing feedback that thinking about the transition in this way was a really valuable reflection tool. And we had some teachers starting to think about, well, why was that a negative experience? Which helped us get into discussions about how the school was supporting them or not supporting them, the professional development that was available. A lot of times it started to coming down to maybe the school didn't have the best professional development, but there was a strong peer support system, so teachers learning from each other's and from other teachers that they were co-teaching with. And what I'd like to invite you to do is taking about 15 minutes, just map out and write down, take notes on as many or as few of these little columns as you want to do. It would be really useful if you just write down a few things, because we'd like to have the opportunity to kind of compare some of these responses across the table. And then after we'll have a little bit of a share and a compare, and then we'll talk about other contexts that you might be able to use this tool in, whether it's for your own professional development, for a reflective teaching practice journal, but we'd love to just have a group discussion so that we can learn more about what we could do with this. When it says, when I first heard about, this could be when you first heard that you were going to be moving into a new building, when you first heard that it was going to be retrofitted and you would get new furniture. This could be when you first heard that there was something called innovative learning environments and you wanted your school to take part in whatever this was because it sounded exciting. This is just thinking about when you first heard about something and then how you adapted to that change. And then as you go down, what we suggested was in the workshop, what we did was, because we were facilitating small groups and we had half a day, we started by just mapping out the story on the Post-its that you saw earlier. And it was a lot easier to kind of rearrange them and move them around. Because I could not bring 130 Post-its with me from Melbourne this morning, what we did was we created these workshops so that you could, this worksheet, so you could just jot down a few notes about what was happening. So I'd suggest starting by writing the actions. So this could be you moved into the space, you got an email, you showed up and everything was changed, just writing down the things that were happening. Starting to kind of think about and record and remember what you were thinking about or feeling or questions that you had. And then for pains and gains, this is starting to look at what about this experience made it negative and what about this experience made it positive. And these are really interesting because they allow us to compare what schools were doing that either supported or were getting in the way of teachers adapting to their new space. And then we'll go over the bottom column after you've filled out a few of these squares. And you do have about 15 minutes. Thank you. we do hope that you have some interesting ideas, that you had some interesting discussions, and that you're able to use this as a tool to start kind of reflecting, having a discussion, sharing your experiences with other people or with members within your own team. So if you have any other questions for me, I will be hanging out down here. There are printed off fact sheets that I will put up in a visible place on the table there momentarily. Like Wes was mentioning, unfortunately, it does not have the magic, do this activity, put this up on the whiteboard, have the students do this, and you will adapt to your new space. It is a lot more of a wicked complex personal problem than that, which you knew going into the session. So thank you all for joining me in the session.